that's over 100 years old, always focusing on those teams that were there at the outset has always been a hallmark of our game. And obviously the Blackhawks, as one of the original six, represent that notion of history, tradition, and authenticity.
When it comes to the Chicago Blackhawks, there would be no team in the Windy City without the late Frederic McLaughlin. A pioneer in American hockey, McLaughlin was at the helm of founding the club in the 1920s and 30s. Throughout his time with the franchise, he is credited with 2 Stanley Cup titles and the progress made for the game of hockey in Chicago and beyond. In 1926, Frederic McLaughlin and a group of businessmen purchased the NHL expansion Chicago Blackhawks.
The name for the Blackhawks very much inspired and tied into his service during World War I. He was part of the Blackhawk Division in the U.S. Army during that time, and so when he was able to name his own franchise, why not take the name of his Army division and call them the Chicago Blackhawks?
A strong-willed owner and president, McLaughlin was determined for the team to succeed financially through its first few years of ownership, going head-to-head against rival teams and league heavyweights in his goal to bring elite, high-level hockey to the Midwest.
It's very important to see hockey growing in the Midwest, and you can say for the first several decades of the NHL, Frederic McLaughlin is one of the most important people in the growth of the game in the Midwest of the United States during those decades.
Known for his eye for talent, McLaughlin was heavily involved with team operations and player decisions, ultimately leading the team to its first Stanley Cup championship in 1934, just 8 years after the team was founded. As a champion for American players, which at the time was not the prevailing way forward, 4 years later, the Blackhawks hoisted their second cup in 1938 with a team made up of the largest number of Americans of any NHL team at that time.
He was very proud that during the 1930s, one of his Stanley Cup winning teams had 8 American players on it. It took 57 years until the '95 New Jersey Devils were able to equal that amount of Americans on a Stanley Cup winning team.
It's not surprising that McLaughlin would do that because having recently served in the Army in World War I, he was very focused on young American men and what their role was, not just in the Army, but in sports.
Frederic McLaughlin retired as president of the Blackhawks in 1939, but remained with the organization until the time of his passing in 1944. He was inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame in 1963, reflecting his broad and important impact on the game.
Frederic McLaughlin laid the foundation for the success of the Blackhawks, both on and off the ice. The Stanley Cups, he was there for the most recent Stanley Cups, but most importantly, the following and fan base that was built by this storied franchise. It all started with Frederic McLaughlin.
And now, joining the list of immortals who have left an indelible mark on the game of hockey in the United States, please welcome the late Frederic McLaughlin to the United States Hockey Hall of Fame. Representing Frederic tonight on behalf of the family is his granddaughter, Castle McLaughlin.